And so Rowena.
So Rowena Fielding, Magpie Women Protect You. Do you think that there's enough understanding around the differences, the extent of the differences between purposes for processing and processing activities? For example, direct marketing purposes could break down into analysis, profiling, sending messages, keeping data, backing up data, maintaining data. And do you think that will cause problems for people trying to decide what to get consent for?
Undoubtedly, and I can't say anything more than that. And I think we've probably seen a few fines issued over the last couple of days where that clearly wasn't understood. And you are the expert in that area, but it's going to be a steep learning curve if people are not up to speed with the guidance as it is at the moment. I think that's the case with most provisions.
Do you think the guidance as it is makes it clear?
Not yet.
Distinction between purposes and processing?
Not yet, but I have no doubt it will shortly. There's a lot of interpretation that's gone on recently, as we know. Yeah. Hello.
Hey,
Ben.
Yeah.
Ben?
Ben McCorkadale, Zero Waste Scotland. It's a question about marketing and consent. We're having a bit of a debate, my colleague and I, about how to record consent not given. So, if that's a customer, they say, no, thank you. How do I know, how do I remember that in a business system?
And it's very interesting, isn't it? I had a case, I can't remember who it was, but the woman wanted to be removed from the list, and we had to write back to her and say, well, we can't remove you, because if we completely remove you, we're going to get the next listing and we're going to send you the same information again. So there is, and I can't remember what guidance it is, but there's definitely ICO guidance which says you're allowed to keep that information. In fact, you must have a system in place to make sure that it's retained so that you don't then send that person marketing, and you can't send them an email and say, you've asked us to be removed, do you want to come back on again? Because is that okay?
So presumably a normal stock list would cover it.
Yeah, I mean that you are allowed to.
And as a records manager, I would say, what's the retention of that stock list?
As long as you have a system in place to justify your retention, then that's fine.
But lots of contingent and consequential kind of issues to be discussed. Sorry, there was a question over there. That was Kirsty, yeah.
Hi, Kirsty Ferguson. I've worked in mental health and learning disability services pretty well all my life. And I wholly agree with what's there, but people who have a mental health problem, and particularly with a learning disability, I suppose what it occurs to me is that this will come up against the Capacity Acts, because they're meant to be able to make their own decisions to whatever level they can. But actually this will be very difficult. There's a lot of sharing of information of necessity, and the risk here is that people get their right to consent taken away because they come under two things that you have mentioned. One, the vital interests, and two, they're in a position where the data controller has a great power over them, and the risk is that their rights are actually restricted hugely, because for social services, for the NHS, for a whole range of charities who support these people, it's going to be so difficult to do it. And I've worked with people with mental health problems, and this is just after the first Data Protection Act. We just got fed up of being asked constantly, do you consent to this, do you consent to that? It's not something that they could cope with, so just said no, it's not anything to do with any of it. So there's a whole range of things. Is there going to be guidance to support all of these bodies on that? Because the principle behind that is fantastic. How it's actually taken through. There's some very, very vulnerable people who still should have rights.
I think, though, that what the outcome of that will be that you won't be relying on consent to a huge extent, and that there will be a lot more thought about how else you are processing the data, and the processing conditions will have to be referred to, and therefore you'll not need to go to those individuals and ask for their consent, but you will have documented procedures in place which allow you to do that, and data sharing, as you know, already has that documentation. And I think it's fundamental that consent is not relied on where it's not appropriate to do so. And in fact, if individuals refuse to provide their consent, but you have another basis for processing that, because it's in their vital interest, then it's unfair to seek their consent, and it would be wrong to do that if you're then going to just process that information anyway.
As what I'm always arguing is from the opposite side, because it would be there, but actually it would be much easier to say, well, they can't give their consent, therefore we won't give them the opportunity. But the Capacity Act say that they should be involved in as many decisions as possible about things that affect them.
Yeah.
But this actually runs absolutely counter to that.
The consent issue does, but I would hope that that will be addressed through the other processing conditions, and that these will be clearly set out. Consent sits on one side, but there will also have to be fairness. So even if you're not seeking consent, fairness means you have to tell that individual what you are doing and how you are going to do that, and particularly if you're talking about special categories, health information. So there will still be information made available to an individual. It's just that they won't require consent. They won't require to consent, because that processing will be done under one of the other headings.
I just think it's an area that would be quite a lot of challenge.
Yes, no, and I think you're absolutely right, and I think data sharing in general is challenging. But this is an opportunity to make sure that if it doesn't require consent and there is another processing condition, then that's the one that should be relied upon and not consent, and particularly where it's seen to inhibit data sharing, and that's something that no one wants to do if it's in someone's interests to do it. The regulation is there to walk that fine line, and you're absolutely right, there's going to have to be a lot of thought gone into it in order to make sure that it's done appropriately and correctly. But it's not an impossible task, I don't think. And I suspect the outcome will be that consent isn't relied on to such a great extent in many areas, and particularly where you're dealing with vulnerable people.
Can I just come in there?
Of course.
I agree exactly what Laura's saying. In terms of establishing the legitimate interests, etc., you're having a discussion with your client groups, your individual clients, and you should be using that discussion to interpret as much of their views on it prior to making the decision. So you said they've got to be involved. Involved presumably doesn't mean they always have to give their consent, but it means that they have to participate in the decision-making process. And then you come back to your governance side and make sure that you record the basis for making the ultimate decision for the processing that you ultimately carry out.
I'm going to draw this session to a close now, because time's moving on. But I just want to say thank you very much, Laura. That was a really detailed and kind of meaty session on the issues. And no doubt we'll be coming back to some of these questions around the afternoon. So could you join me in thank Laura?